Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's broadcast. You might have seen my confidence curriculum. These 4 skills will save the day. Learn to deal with spooking. It's going to happen. Learn to gallop. It's probably going to happen. Learn to rear. It might happen. Learn to fall. Often does happen. Usually you're not hurt. But either way, get these in the bag and you're going to have a nice time, aren't you? So right now, we're going to be dealing with number 1. Let me just bob that up there. Let's talk about spooking. So roll up, fill up the audience. Let's have a little chat about spooking horses. Right, that's enough of that. I love you. Got any water? Right, where have I gone? Here I am. Oh, hello again. So, spooking horses. That video there could have been on so many subjects. It could have been, don't dumb down your horses. I might use it again for that. Don't assume that your horses can't do what you want them to do. You know that a disco is nothing to be scared of. You know that fog on the floor is nothing to be scared of. You know that special effects are nothing to be scared of. The motorbikes jumping, they're doing their thing. You know all that. Don't dumb down your horse that it somehow can't be shown that and accept that as well. You know it. Your horse could know it. So many things. How to desensitize your horse. In fact, a quick advert here. That video was taken off my Carl's Horsemanship video, available somewhere around this link, where we go from the very basics of horsemanship, how to put a rug on, how to lead through a gate, how to lead down from the field, how to wash your feet, all with the idea of establishing this relationship that I've got you. It's all right. If I say it's all right, it's all right. And in that video there, I was saying it was all right. So this could equally be the desensitization video, but it's not. It's spooking. That's what we're going to talk about. And I think you'd agree. And if you don't agree, I need to know because I've got this wrong. That if you were better at dealing with spooks, you'd have a better time. You'd be more confident on your horse. If you were more confident at hoping for the best and just dealing with the rest, you generally have a better time. I hope I'm right in that. And dealing with spooks is a skill. I'm sure you've seen people riding their horses and their horse blows a trumpet at something that goes snap or crack or crackle or pop, and they just laugh, or they call it a silly sausage or a silly so-and-so, or they shout yee-haw, and they just carry on because they're good at dealing with spooks. But then equally, the dealing with spooks, if you've got the same horse for 25 years and you know each other really, really, really well, then you might find that your experience of dealing with spooks is getting more and more in the past. You got the horse as a 4-year-old, and now it's getting more and more in the past because it's getting better and better. And then between 18 and 26 years old, when it died, you knew each other inside out. Then you have a break because you're upset that your horse has died, and you have a couple of years off. Well, that's even longer that you haven't had that experience of saying, "Oh, you silly sausage," and "Yee-haw." And so when you get your new horse, your new 4-year-old, the last time you jumped at something and said, "Oh, you silly sausage," and shouted "Yee-haw," was 24 years ago. So you got to understand that the human dealing with spooking, is a skill. It's a skill, and we need to get good at that skill. I hope you'll agree with me here. It may be that you don't agree with me, and it's like, "Carl, I don't want to get good at spooking. I just hate the whole thing." In which case, you need to get a horse that is not going to do anything. So you're looking at Bob the Cob Dope on the Rope, who's 104 and seen it all. And in that case, a nice 4-year-old is not for you. And it's very important we get the right horses according to what we want. But nonetheless, even if you've got old Bob the Cob Dope on the rope, he will jump at something at some point, even if it's only a little one. And this is the problem. If you don't get better at spooking, you will get worse at spooking. Because we are either growing, this is life, this is good life advice here. We are either growing or we're shrinking. So I'd still advise you to get your skills on dealing with spooks. Having assumed that you have actually come away to my way of thinking, we need to learn to deal with spooks. We need to teach ourselves to deal with spooks, as well as teach the horses to deal with spooks. So let's get on with it. What are we going to do? We teach our horses so many tricks and stunts and desensitize so much in bite sizes that the horse can deal with. But equally, if it's a trick or a stunt that I'm not good at or not used to, I need to treat myself in bite sizes as well. So we've got two brains on board here. When we are frightened of something, we are inclined to react with panic, fight and flight. Obviously, something happens, your stomach crunches up, you go, "Oh," and shout something involuntarily. And equally, the horse does as well. If it sees something, let's say, I don't know, the fella washing his car is always a good one. You're just going past just as he, "Oh, horses are," and just doing the equivalent. It is allowed. I do want to say this. It is allowed. We're allowed to jump. You and I jump all the time. You come around the corner, you didn't realise someone was still in the house and they haven't gone shopping because they came back for their credit card or whatever, and you turn around the corner and you go, "Yeah, oh, you scared me then." And we think nothing of it. And yet we expect our little horses with their little brains to never put a foot wrong. Well, they're gonna. And it's fine. It doesn't mean anything. You don't need to read in the meaning that this now means that the horse is going to gallop off. And of course, if it does gallop off, that's fine, because we've gone to number 2, learn to gallop. But this isn't the learn to gallop. This isn't the learn to gallop video. This is the learn to deal with spooking. So our primitive minds are the ones that panic, the ones that go, "Oh," when you're going across the garden and you see a snake and just go, "Oh," and then you realize it's a hose pipe and you go, "Oh." Our primitive minds just work on response. They're the blind panic or the super angry minds. They don't make good decisions. It's sometimes called the instinctive mind. Sometimes I call it the primitive mind. Some people call it the reptilian mind. Some people call it the reactive mind. But it's the one where the fight and flight syndrome suddenly pops in. There we are. On top of that, we've got our intellect, because we're intellectual beings. So there we go. The spooking on your part is your primitive mind, your reactive mind. On the part of your horse, it's also the part of the horse's brain that is the reactive mind. It evolved earlier, so we share this. We share it with all animals. It's more to the center of the brain, and then outside of that is our intellect, which is logic, reason, language, all those sort of things. And in the horse, of course, it's a lot smaller. We don't want to be relying on the horse's intellect to get ourselves out of any situations. And in fact, we can dismiss the horse's intellect, because the horse should be relying on our intellect. We're clearly the tool for the job. As I began this video, we understand that the disco isn't scary and the special effects aren't scary and the motorbikes aren't scary. And in fact, if there was no horses in that video I just showed you, you'd find it quite boring. You'd be like, well, what am I watching? That's how much we know it. If you got any kind of reaction there like, oh, it's only because you were dumbing down the horses that they couldn't cope with this. I need to also point out that when we did that, it was a training opportunity. I saw the opportunity. I took the training. It made sense because me and my horses, we have been through so much in bite sizes that I felt it was possibly an opportunity not to be missed. And if you want to know the training method, again, it's all documented into fireworks and everything in Carl's Horsemanship Video Guide, which you can purchase somewhere, following the link somewhere around there. And it's very, very good at describing exactly what we do here. Is my only training as far as horses goes, because I know that a lot of people follow my training or follow my philosophy in their own training, in their own discipline. So they might be doing carriage driving or Western or natural horsemanship or eventing. They're all so different. I don't like giving horse training, but the principles of my horse training is in that video. So if you haven't bought it, buy it, because it's absolutely invaluable. Anyway, I saw this opportunity and I took the opportunity, and it was the right step. It worked out well. Those of you who are watching the video, can I get the video to play without the sound coming on? Let's just see if I can bob that in there as well. Oh, look, there's a little volume button. Let's just turn that right down. Where have I gone? There we are. Let's see if we can just play that. So some of you might notice that these little horses there, they're not 100% confident, because I emphasize again, this is a training opportunity. I would say they're 80-85% confident. So we're out of the regular zone. We perform in arenas like this, so they're quite used to arenas like this. But this is the idea. Just go a little bit at a time out of your comfort zone. And the theory that we're doing here is, I would not be schooling you if there was a problem. And our horses know that. So there we go, round and round and round, schooly. There we are, quite happy. And we've done this for a decade. The horses know exactly what they're doing. If you don't ever want to put your horse out of its comfort zone, then it will, again, we're either growing or we're shrinking. Its confidence will shrink. Obviously, I've taken it to the extremes of their confidence growing, but this has been an absolute experience in the bank for us all. These horses are being fantastic. And the people who watched this little impromptu training session that we got together, they caught us in the cafeteria afterwards and they were like, oh my God, those horses. They were absolutely amazed. And I must admit, I was very, very proud. But there we go. when we, the humans, are learning to deal with spooking, what we are actually learning to do, we know that the disco is fine, we know that the man washing his car is fine, but we're frightened that the horse is going to react. So we need to, A, accept that your horse is capable of doing it. Now, not be capable of doing it now, but a horse, that's why I put the video on, because a horse is capable of doing it. This is possible for a horse. You can then work back and go, it is possible for your horse if you put in the training and tra-la-la-la-la. However, it's going to be hard to put in the training for your horse's sake if you're not used to spooking yourself, which is your primitive mind. If your primitive mind is jumping up and going, time to panic, I'm not sure this is right at all, then we're going to have to take control of our primitive mind and our horse's primitive mind. So when you decide that you're going to teach yourself how to deal with spooking, you have to come to the fact that you are dealing with your primitive mind and your horse's primitive mind in the sizes that they can cope with, according to what your intellectual mind has worked out. Your intellectual mind is in charge of the whole thing. So if you're like, right, I am going to regularly have acclimatization to spooking experiences for myself, and that will tie in exactly the same, because it's exactly the same for the horse. Here's a great example. So let's say I want to do some de-spooking sessions for myself, for my primitive mind, and I saw somewhere that we could get 4 garden sprinklers sprinkling into a regular arena. We're going to get our wet weather gear on, and we're going to take our horse through those sprinklers. Now, secretly in my head, I'm already seeing how this could then go on to fireworks over the next few years as you do that. But there we are. That's just me. I do this. I can see how things go. And that video that I showed you, I would trust those horses to perform next to a A380 Airbus that's taking off or landing. I would. If Emirates Airways said, come on, we want to do an advert, let's get them horses, I would know that they'd be able to do that with the training, of course, but because it's exactly the same. It's exactly, or helicopters or anything else. It's exactly the same. So for this example, obviously, I'm not going to chuck them in a disco. I'm not going to chuck them at an airport. I'm not going to chuck them at the army base or RAF base or whatever it is. We're going to start, and I think that garden sprinklers are quite nice, something to start with. It's an experience to share. So we're going to get 4 garden sprinklers, get our wet weather gear on, and we're going to do a circuit of the arena, and we're going to go through these garden sprinklers. Even that seems quite a lot. I'm sure you'll agree, because we won't start off with that. We'll be aware that we've got 3 minds to deal with. My intellectual mind is going to do the dealing, and it's dealing with my primitive mind that's worried about these garden sprinklers, and my horse's primitive mind, which is worried about these garden sprinklers. My horse's intellectual mind, we don't have to worry about, because he's not making the decisions. He's looking to me, because that's the relationship that we've got by doing all our groundwork, etc., etc. This is the relationship that we've got. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you better buy my video, Carl's Horsemanship Guide. So this isn't a constant advert for that, but it is jolly good video of how we do it here. So forget the horse's intellectual mind. It's my intellectual mind in charge of my own panic reactions and my horse's panic reactions. My panic reactions, my primitive mind has the processing power of a 7-year-old. So I don't want to be getting 7-year-old me in his wet weather gear and forcing him through 4 garden sprinklers that he's scared of. So we'd break it down into the bite sizes. You've all heard me talk about bite sizes before, but I'm conscious that I am training my primitive mind. The bite sizes are easy to work out. Obviously, we start off with just 1 garden sprinkler, and it's not even in the arena. It's over there, 30 meters away. I'm doing my circle at the preordained moment. I get somebody to turn it on, and I continue to do my figure eights as if it hadn't happened. That's the essentials of what we do here, and we just take that more and more to extremes, so that over the season, the sprinkler gets closer and closer. Then we add in another one. You can see how this would all creep in, and this time next year we've got our wet weather gear, and we're going through the garden sprinklers with everybody leaning on the fence, going, "Ooh, that's so good. Why haven't I got a horse that does that? I wish my horse did that." And the answer is, you have got a horse that does that. It's just you're not doing it. So bear in mind that you've got a primitive mind which has the processing power of a 7-year-old. If you were teaching a 7-year-old child to deal with spooking, you wouldn't start with extreme things. You start with nice, simple things. You've got a 7-year-old to deal with. And in dealing with that, you will also help the horse's primitive mind, which hasn't even got the processing power of a 7-year-old, just because you creep up. But the point of this video, the point that I'm trying to make is, we're not talking about desensitizing your horse. Well, we are, but just as much, probably more so, we're talking about you using your intellect to set up some practices that you can handle as if you were 7. Flags are fantastic. If you've got a flag, they snap and they crack in the wind. But if your first flag is the size of a piece of A4 on a chopstick, you could probably handle that. When we desensitize to flags, bows and arrows, because we do horse archery, I'm usually, Zana's on the horse, I'm walking along the ground, I'm just shooting arrows away from the horse into a target in the center of the arena, so that you get the twang of the bow and the thunk of the arrow hitting the target, and we just go round and round and round. That might take a week or two, and then we can just pop someone onto the horse and lead it round, just making no particular fuss about it, because this is easy. However, it's not the greatest example, because I've done this so many times that it is nowhere near affecting my 7-year-old. But if I was doing something new, I'd be conscious that it's my 7-year-old primitive mind that we are training to spook, or to deal with spooks. We are training my primitive mind with the processing power of a 7-year-old. So what could we do? We could do flags, gradually increasing those. We could do walking over tarps. We could do anything you could think of. But the point isn't to desensitize your horse. In fact, if you wanted to bite-size down something for your own primitive mind, that you're like, oh, well, I'm a little bit worried about carrying a flag, or get a drumstick. Every time you go to the fence, just hit a little tattoo on the fence, as you come to the fence. You could do that. But if doing that on your young horse is a bit too much for you, do it on a horse that can already do it. Because you're not training the horse, you're training your primitive mind. So if you wanted to learn how to carry a flag, shoot a bow and arrow from the back of a horse, you could equally get on a horse that does it already and go through it yourself for a month. Because you're not training the horse, you're training you. Thanks, Pops. Pops is reminding me that I've got to come to the end of this. I think I've laboured the point enough. If you don't believe me, stick it in the comments. But after 12 years of doing rider confidence, hundreds of thousands of conversations. Oh, I do need to say, Rider Confidence, there is a promotion on. We've never done this before. 2 for 1. Not 2 for 1. Sorry, bring a friend. So a double ticket, a ticket for 2. That's a better way of putting of it. It will save you 200 and something pounds if you want to get together with a friend and decide that you want to come to the Rider Confidence course, the one-day course that happens here in that arena over there. Learn to rear, learn to fall, learn about balancing, and it's fun and it's friendly and it's unforgettable. And it's one day and it's absolutely super. So take advantage of that. I'll put the link somewhere around the video. Make sure that you do. It's a limited offer. Obviously, we can't keep this up for very long at that sort of discount, but make the most of it. Anyway, I've had enough. Give me your comments. Let me know what you think. I'm looking forward to reading them. See you later.